Hey, Bruin fans, want to go behind the scenes with your favorite teams and athletes? How about getting exclusive merch and opportunities to enter sweepstakes like sideline access at the Rose Bowl? Introducing Blue and Gold Society, UCLA Athletics fan membership program created to support Bruin student athletes. Members receive benefits like exclusive gear, videos featuring insider stories, and incredible experiences courtesy of UCLA Athletics. Sign up today at blueandgoldsociety.com.
Good afternoon. Happy November. Rainy day again here in Southern California. Getting right down to business here. We are doing it live, doing more at 4 weekday afternoons right after Guy Benson and just before the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang at 5. Mottek On Money, live on the air, 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide, kbc.com, and the on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, kbc.com, Apple iTunes, YouTube, all your favorite podcast platforms. Rough start to the new week on Wall Street with the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ racking up the worst one day of losses seen in about a month. The crypto rout continues with Bitcoin cracking below 92,000. We'll take a closer look at the bearish move in cryptos coming up later this hour with ELEANOR TERRETTT, business journalist and co-host of the Crypto in America podcast. Looks like precious metals also coming under pressure now with gold still above 4,000, but silver has cracked below $50 an ounce. The Dow coming in for a closing loss today of 557 points, back to 46,590. We had the Dow 48K hats out just about a week or so ago when the Dow hit an all-time high. The S&P 500 down 62 at 6,672 points, and the NASDAQ down 193 today to 22,708. The volatility index did spike today by 13%. Taking a look at the price of gold right now hovering at $4,050 an ounce, silver at $49.62 an ounce. Crude oil futures still just below $60 a barrel. And the yield on the 10-year note has been bouncing around lately. We'll take a closer look at that. That's the one that impacts the fixed-rate mortgage rates right now at 4.14%. Stocks racking up a third day of losses today on doubts about interest rate cuts by the Federal Reserve next month. Investors also looking ahead to NVIDIA earnings that will be coming out later this week. NVIDIA pulling back today, and AI is back in focus, of course. NVIDIA down more than $3 today at $186.60. Speaking of AI, it turns out China-backed hackers launched the first large-scale autonomous AI cyber attack. We'll bring in prominent China expert Gordon Chang, senior fellow at the Gatestone Institute and author of numerous books on China, including Plan Red, China's project to destroy America. He'll be joining us live later this hour. Also, foreign investors, including Chinese buyers, are reportedly buying up land in Malibu and the Palisades, also in the Altadena area, all ravaged by the firestorm earlier this year. We'll get an update on that as well. Looks like Alphabet Google had a good day today. The stock was up on reports that Berkshire Hathaway took a stake in that company, scooping up nearly 18 million shares. Berkshire Hathaway, of course, led by famed investor Warren Buffett, has usually stayed away from big tech, with the exception of Apple, and they sold some of that in the last year or so. Alphabet stock did move higher today by nearly $9 at $285 and change. Earnings parade continues this week with big names including Walmart, Home Depot, Target, Lowe's, Gap, all on this week's schedule. In real estate, home values falling for more than half of the nation, according to the latest report from Zillow today, biggest share in more than a decade when the U.S. was struggling to come out of the Great Recession back in those days, back in 2008 and beyond. As of October, according to Zillow, 53% of homes nationwide had lost value in the past year, and nationally home price appreciation has been roughly flat, but that number masks large regional disparities. Home prices falling in much of the Southeast and parts out here in the West, while they're rising in many areas in the Midwest and the Northeast. Fed, of course, also always in focus with some comments today from Fed Governor Christopher Waller. He said he supports another quarter-point cut in the benchmark interest rate in December to help boost the job market, and he doubts that he'll change his mind. Over the weekend, the former Fed governor and Andriana Kugler report said that she violated the Fed's ethics rules around stock trading, pushing the issue of Washington's leaders playing the market back up on stage. Joining us live now on Your Money, the markets, the economy, crypto, real estate, and the whole works now, top-ranked money manager Ken WINANS, President and Chief Investment Officer at WINANS Investments at WINANSinvestments.com. Ken is the author of numerous books, including his latest, Investment Atlas 3, also a Forbes magazine contributor, also has his crypto credentials, by the way, and host of the WINANS Wealth Minute features right here on 790 KBC. Ken, thank you very much for coming to the line here this afternoon.
My pleasure, Frank. And yes, you're right. It was sure an ugly day, but you know what you just rattled off about the Federal Reserve, they're having a bad year between what the new Federal Reserve headquarters is costing, these Fed governors coming under question, whether it's mortgage issues or stock trading. And of course, Jay Powell is effectively a lame duck, a leader right now at the Federal Reserve. So it is difficult to watch these volatile moves in the markets, especially if it's predicated on the Fed. But Frank, what is interesting about all of it, and you look at, and you're 100% right about, we have a lot more earnings coming out. Just when you think earnings season is over, of course, you have NVIDIA's numbers on Friday. You have most of the major retailers posting right before the holiday season. And while that's very, very important, remember, it's the guidance they give about the holiday season, which I think is either going to save this market or continue to have volatility. I've been asked by we have actually a fair number of your listeners that are fascinated about the seasonality, about, how does this November stack up in volatility? Well, it's been one of the more volatile Novembers. You are having to go back at least 10 years to find this kind of thing. But let's also not forget, we're only halfway through this month. And if you start having some good news hitting this market, I think people will buy the dip and they will move forward.
Certainly the crypto folks looking for some good news. That Shabuzi song comes to mind here, good news. And what about cryptos? What's going on here with Bitcoin below 92K after hitting a record high above 126,000 not too long ago?
Frank, here's the thing, and I know you know that you and I have both talked about crypto a lot. I would just say this. First off, Coinbase just got creamed today. I was really amazed to see just how volatile it was. It was the worst performing stock of all the ones that I monitor. This is my concern. About a week and a half ago, Bitcoin broke what many of the technicians and the quants out there would consider its base support point. So we're now back in what I would say Bitcoin is in a channel. And we'll find out if there is some point people start buying it. But again, it's just interesting to watch this kind of funny change in leadership between digital gold and physical gold. And as you mentioned earlier, although silver might be pulling back a bit, people with their gold holdings, they're not letting them go very quickly. In fact, I talk to more and more people wanting to buy more of them. Why is this important for crypto? I could see some crypto people buying gold, shifting their portfolios around, which means there might be more selling.
Very interesting. On there live with top-ranked money manager Ken Winans. And what about Ethereum and Solana has hit I think maybe even a low for the year, down around 130. We see Ethereum right now just above 3,000. I believe it cracked below 3,000 earlier today. And there's Doge at 15 cents.
The thing about Ethereum, if you want to find, I think it's right now going to be in the finalist list of the most volatile thing I've ever seen in my career. And remember, that's tracking an awful lot of commodities. That thing is just a bucking bronco. It's all over the place. The problem I have with Ethereum.
Bruin fans, fall is finally here. That means UCLA football is back in your life. Head out to the Rose Bowl to enjoy America's best tailgating and to make more unforgettable memories with the Bruins. Nico Iamaleava and the Bruins are ready to make an impact this year, and we need you cheering them at the Rose Bowl. Visit UCLABruins.com or call 310-UCLA-WIN to lock in your tickets today. 310-UCLA-WIN.
November is heating up for U.S. soccer.
The United States need to be a little more nasty.
Big international friendlies for the men.
Oh, Callum, that was nasty.
And a Black Friday friendly for the women.
The expectations have always been here for this team. We understand that.
Listen anywhere on the go with the Westwood One Sports app. And for behind-the-scenes stories, catch the U.S. Soccer Podcast.
Boy, do we have an episode for you.
Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Beneath her, as we better know it as, something changed in the way it was programming its whole situation. It caught everybody by surprise about a year ago. I don't think we've quite recovered from that. And the fact that it vaulted back and then it's pulled back again, that kind of volatility, even for the seasoned crypto traders, is not giving them the warm and fuzzies. I just think if people are going to play with crypto, they're going to go back to the granddaddy, which is going to be Bitcoin right now. One other quick thing, and let's not forget, there's a lot of new regulation coming out next year, especially for stable coins. I really think we need to see where does this fall into the gamut, and I think it's going to be in the first quarter that we'll get more guidance on that. But no, I think that you just have to get used to this volatility. If you are, you've got to, as much as you like the upside, you've got to be willing to accept the downside possibilities too. But I would also say this, I do not believe in buy and hold on anything. And I think there were a lot of people who got very, very comfortable with Bitcoin. They turned their back on it, and they gave back a lot of money that was not necessary. It's very good to have good trading discipline if you're going to play in this area.
And I'm sure you've noticed market was doing a lot better when the government was shut down. And ever since it's reopened, last Wednesday, was it? Last Wednesday, Thursday, we've seen this rout here. What's your gut feeling on where this market goes from here?
Frank, it's interesting, and in a moment you always ask me what I like right now. I use pullbacks in the market to tell me, number one, what's the underlying strength? And the truth is there's still a lot of groups out there that are holding up reasonably well. I mean, they're still having decent years. They've held on to most of their gains. Who would ever guess that the financial stocks like JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs would be outperforming the NASDAQ? But they still are. So for a lot of these stocks, it's a standard pullback. And I think while we're on that, as much as, this kind of volatility really unnerves everybody, let's also put this in perspective. We are down a whopping 3% off of the S&P 500's all-time high. That is hardly catastrophic. It is healthy to have these pullbacks. But the one caveat I would give is that when you have the kind of volatility happening this late in the year, that tells me there's a lot of rebalancing in portfolios. Some people are taking profits early, and they're moving out of some of the really frothy areas of the market, which means, a more balanced portfolio, I think, will weather the storm better than one that's placing bets on just tech.
And speaking of tech, they're calling it the Buffett bump for Alphabet. Google, the parent company of Google, Alphabet, at an all-time high here today, and taking the spotlight away from the magnificent one, NVIDIA, which took another hit today. NVIDIA down more than 3 to 186 and change. Google moving higher today to, $285 and change, up more than nearly $9 for Google. What about those big names here?
Well, here's the thing. It's interesting. They keep kind of swapping positions because it wasn't that long ago when Google was really in the doldrums. I mean, last year it was a tough, very tough hold. This year, the tough holds are the Amazons and the Metas of the world. So it is, and certainly in Netflix. I mean, it's been a tough hold for some of them. Here's the problem. Now, in the case of Google, this is, very clearly dependent upon that, they have gotten their act together on AI. They've figured out their issues. They have a lot of other good things, certainly in their search engine. They've cleared a lot of the antitrust stuff that was really affecting them last year. So they've made a lot of good moves to clear things up. And I dare say, I think aligning with this administration, they played their political cards very smart on where things were going with it. I think, again, but, I see just an awful lot of red on my screen as I do black for the basically year to date for a lot of tech. So, again, it is still very much a stock picker's market. You've got to be somewhat careful. I'm just saying I'm just going to own those, and I'm going to turn my back on them.
All right, what about real estate? I don't know if you had a chance to look at that Zillow report. I know you have your own real estate index. What about real estate in this report that shows a lot of places the air's coming out of a lot of markets here?
It definitely has, and a lot of it too. And I know that people in California are aware of it. It's the combination of insurance costs, if you can even get insurance, and mortgage costs. And especially when you look at some of the areas that were the once hot markets, like Florida, especially anything with condos, it's just a bloodbath right now. So the question really does come up, is there going to be some relief if we have rates continuing to come down and affordability mortgages? But, when you are starting to talk about properties that are in these, disaster-prone areas, I'm just not sure the banks are willing to step in and take the heat. Let's not forget, The banks were left holding the bag. I know we talk a lot about the bailout of 2007, 2008, but a lot of those banks that absorbed those institutions that failed ended up basically holding the bag and getting hit with massive lawsuits on properties they didn't really want. I don't think the banks are going to go back to that world again. But with that being said, Frank, the real estate world is a very much, and ask any realtor, any mortgage broker, it is still looking at location, location, location. But in this case, you have to take a good look at disaster areas and certainly how new the infrastructure is, which is going to be coming up more and more. As many people know, I now live in Las Vegas. We are in a land of literally no disasters, which is hard to believe. But again, you can find that the real estate market here is a bit more stable.
On there live with top-ranked money manager Ken Winans at WINANSinvestments.com. And we did hear from the Fed Governor Christopher Waller today, who might be up to replace the current Fed Chairman Jerome Powell, supporting another quarter-point cut next month. What do you think is going to happen next month as bets are shifting around on the Fed's next move? And what do you think is going to happen with interest rates next month?
Well, we're going to have the minutes come out on Wednesday, and it will be interesting to see, the tone of things. The Fed is still very, very concerned about the fallout of tariffs on an inflationary picture around the world. I mean, we've talked about it so many times on Mottek On Money that, this inflation thing they keep talking about, there's a lot of talk about how food prices are still very high. I think you better go and look at maybe regionally in California where the cost of living is so high. But I'm looking right here at the 19 commodities I track. Many of them are agricultural. And you're looking at, cocoa's down 44% on the year. Orange juice is down 63%. Oats are down 11%. Sugar's down 33%. So you don't see this across the board. Everything is higher. Yes, there are things like cattle that are usually higher, but they've actually begun to pull back. And certainly we know what's going on with the metals. But the point being that you just don't see it. So if the Fed continues to buy into this argument that inflation's a problem, then I think we're going to have a disappointing announcement in December. But I think it's going to be the case. They're going to stay the course and not be one and done like many people thought in September. Maybe it's going to be an eighth of a point if you ask me to be a betting person, but I don't think it's going to be zero.
All right, and that wild card out there after that Supreme Court hearing on the legality of President Trump's tariffs, we're awaiting a decision that really could come at any minute. What do you think is going to happen with that, and what kind of a market reaction might we see if it is in fact ruled that the tariffs are not permitted and the Treasury potentially will have to refund $1 trillion?
Well, here's the thing. I think, again, Frank, it'd be fun to have a trade lawyer or somebody who's a trade expert come on. I think what is going to happen is, again, the people I've talked to, is that, okay, if the Supreme Court rules against the president being able to unilaterally do this, that means that these things have to go through Congress. Congress needs to make the treaties. In that case, I don't think there'd be an immediate refund of anything. It would just mean that there might be a stoppage right now on any new tariffs while it does go through the legislative process. But as we just discovered, as they shut down the government, it would be a very, very lengthy process going well into next year on them trying to do anything like that. But I think you're going to look at it on a case-by-case basis between industries and individual companies on whether or not that's an effect. I think it causes some volatility, but I don't think it by itself is going to derail everything.
A lot of focus on affordability these days. It looks like stocks have gotten a lot more affordable in the last week or so. Ken, any specific places where you are putting money now and or taking it off the table?
Frank, I know I'm going to sound like an old broken record, but here's a good example of what I've often been talking about with those dull old utilities. They were up today. The 45 utility stocks that I track in my stock index actually on average were up today. And here's the part that's most amazing is that, again, we comparing it with tech or with commodities, utility stocks on price alone, not even including the dividend, they're up 13 to 14% on the year on average. So you're taking one of the duller parts of the S&P 500 and it's matching that, not to mention, as I said before, and a very nice dividend. So now this is where it gets interesting, and we all know the problems that California has. So I would definitely not be buying any California common utilities. But I'm just saying, if you are buying into the AI situation. You understand the power needs to make those chips. If you're a believer in crypto, you know what the energy needs are for any of the miners. So again, instead of fighting it, win there. And I think you can go down a long list, whether they're water utilities, electric utilities. I particularly would look at the central part of the United States. I mean, one that many people might not even know, Black Hills, symbol BKH. It's up 19% on the year with a 4% dividend. How about Avista? Avista's up 12%, symbol AVA, up 12% on the year with a 5% dividend. Let's talk about, I'll throw one of the big names out there, Frank, for anybody who certainly knows Duke Energy, symbol DUK. Stock is up 16% on the year with a 4% dividend. I could go down the whole list. The only negatives are Edison International and PG&E. The rest of the list looks very clean. I think that, again, the moral of the story is don't fall in love with tech. Diversify your portfolio, and you'll find your portfolio will perform well and will have less volatility.
Terrific, Ken. Thank you very much for taking the call this afternoon. That is top-ranked money manager Ken Winans, President and Chief Investment Officer at Winans Investments at winansinvestments.com, author of numerous books.
Bruin fans, fall is finally here. That means UCLA football is back in your life. Head out to the Rose Bowl to enjoy America's best tailgating and to make more unforgettable memories with the Bruins. Nico Iamaleava and the Bruins are ready to make an impact this year, and we need you cheering them at the Rose Bowl. Visit UCLABruins.com or call 310-UCLA-WIN to lock in your tickets today. 310-UCLA-WIN.
What's up, guys? David Pollack here, former Georgia Bulldog, former analyst with College Game Day, and host of my new show, See Ball, Get Ball. I'm a defensive lineman. That's why that's the name. You see the ball, you go get it. We're going to dive deep into college football. We're going to break down film. We'll have bold takes, real conversations with the biggest names in the sport every single week. If you eat, sleep, and breathe college football like I do, man, I promise you, See Ball, Get Ball is for you. So do me a favor. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Latest Investment Atlas 3, also Forbes magazine contributor, and also the host of the Winans Wealth Minute features here in 790 KBC and Winning with Winans in the Las Vegas area. Ken, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
My pleasure, Frank. Have a good night.
You too. Thank you very much. And out to the freeways now on 790 KBC. Mottek On Money continues, 790 KBC. Rough day on Wall Street to kick off the new week. The Dow down 557 at the closing bell at 46,590. S&P 500 down 62. The NASDAQ down 193. The volatility index spiking up 13%. Gold right now hovering at $4,050 an ounce. Silver just below 50 at $49.62 an ounce. NVIDIA pulling back $3.57 at $186.60. The star of the day, Alphabet Google, up nearly $9 at $285 and change. Bitcoin, rough day here, down today below 92K, 91,884 at last check. Ethereum cracked below 3,000 earlier, now at 3,011. Solana at 130. Doge at the moment at 15 cents. Now the latest news on 790 KBC. Mottek On Money continues here, 790 KBC. Big story in the AI world. It turns out China-backed hackers launched the first large-scale autonomous AI cyber attack. We're watching the latest developments with China's biggest ally in South America, Venezuela, as the U.S. Navy continues to add additional ships to the Caribbean. Let's bring in prominent China expert Gordon Chang, senior fellow at the Gatestone Institute and author of numerous books, including Plan Red, China's project to destroy America. Also want to talk to Gordon today about the report that foreign investors, including apparently some Chinese buyers, are reportedly buying up land in the Malibu area and the Palisades, as well as in Altadena, in the areas hit by the firestorm earlier this year. Gordon Chang, thank you very much for coming to the line here this afternoon.
Well, thank you, Frank.
First of all, on this big AI story, we've been talking about NVIDIA this hour. The stock did move lower today, and of course, it's been a downdraft in the tech names, as you probably well know. But on this big AI story related to China, with Chinese hackers reportedly launching the first large-scale autonomous AI cyber attack, what do we need to know about this?
Well, the important thing is that this was entirely predictable because China does have good AI. They're great at hacking. And, of course, they were going to marry the two. And so we should have been expecting this. And, yes, it was a successful attack. And the other story involved in all of this is that we've known what the Chinese have been doing for decades, and yet our cyber defenses are not nearly as robust as they need to be or as they could be. So to a certain extent, this is on us.
All right. How was this discovered? And can you give us any other details about the impact of this attack?
Well, it was discovered basically through the routine defenses that we have. But they apparently got some very critical technologies out of all of this. And I guess they're still doing the forensics on how much they've taken. But we can assume that the damage is substantial because this was very well thought out. They have great AI, and they have been able to move with quite a lot of speed and without us detecting them at first.
Very interesting. Are they getting our latest chips or NVIDIA's latest chips? Or where do things stand with that?
Well, NVIDIA's latest chips are being sold in large quantities to places that don't have data centers. So, for instance, many of the chips go to Singapore. Now, from Singapore, it's clear that they've been transferred to places like China. And I'm sure that NVIDIA knows what's going on, and yet they continue to sell chips to places like Singapore. This is important for the United States because we need to start cracking down on the end users because we know that China's getting a substantial number of the most sophisticated NVIDIA chips.
All right. During your speech recently to the Lincoln Club here in Los Angeles, you did address the issue of Venezuela and China, its close ties to China. And, of course, we're seeing these military moves by the United States in the Caribbean and President Trump commenting on what's going on in Venezuela recently. Give us an update on your assessment of what's happening there.
Well, the most interesting thing recently is that China and Venezuela agreed to a free trade agreement that covers 400 tariff codes. Now, Venezuela has basically one product. It's crude oil and some variations of crude oil. But opening up Venezuela to the Chinese factories, which are super efficient, means that China is going to take over the Venezuelan industry because Venezuelan companies will not be able to compete if there are no tariffs involved. This means that China has a bigger stake in Venezuela, which means it has more incentive to oppose what the United States is trying to do, which is to get that country out of the drug business. The Cartel of the Suns, which is run by Nicolas Maduro, the president, and by senior members of the armed forces, is going to be declared to be a terrorist organization. And that means the Trump administration will put even more pressure on the regime.
What do you see happening with this situation here if the U.S. does go in militarily to Venezuela? What kind of Chinese response might we see, and indeed what other responses might we see?
China doesn't have the ability to oppose American military action against Venezuela in our hemisphere. But what it can do is create diversions abroad that will require the U.S. to pay attention to, for instance, the ongoing dispute between Japan and China right now. And, of course, China is pressuring Scarborough Shoal of the Philippines. So China renewing or increasing the pressure on both the Philippines and Japan means that the United States is going to have to divert resources out of the Western Hemisphere. So I think that that's probably going to be the Chinese way of protecting Nicolas Maduro, who very much is a proxy for Beijing.
Also on the military front, I don't know if you saw the report saying that satellite images have given a new glimpse of a Chinese naval armada, basically Chinese naval vessels that could play a role in a potential amphibious invasion someplace. What do we need to know about that?
Yeah, they have a new LHD, which is the Sichuan. They type 076, which is basically can do two things. One of them is it can be a drone carrier, as it's been called, or it can launch landing crafts. Now, this is a ship that the United States has in terms of the same class, but it is also a ship that China could use really for aggression and not for defense. So clearly China intends to project power. China doesn't enforce global norms or to try to maintain peace and stability. So this type of vessel is clearly one that the Chinese are going to use to create problems for its neighbors. And we can also say the same thing for China's Type 003 aircraft carrier, the Fujian, which was recently commissioned and which is now going through trials. By the way, the Fujian is the world's only aircraft carrier that can launch through electronic means, the email system, the fifth generation fighters. Our Ford class carrier is not able to do that, just paradoxically. So really, the Chinese are, in at least one sense, a step ahead of us.
That is very interesting. We'll continue to follow those developments very, very closely. Closer to home, where there's a report, and we'd love to get your update on this, if you have any, that foreign investors, including Chinese buyers, reportedly buying up the land that was burned in the firestorm earlier this year here in the Los Angeles area, Malibu, as well as in Altadena. Any updates on this activity?
Yeah, we don't know the identity of the foreign purchaser that has bought 9 lots on the shore in Malibu, as well as some lots elsewhere inland, as you mentioned, Altadena. Many people suspect that it is a Chinese buyer. If it is, it's probably a wealthy Chinese owner who basically wants to get money out of their country, because right now China's having real problems with its economy. But the issue here for the United States is
Bruin fans, fall is finally here. That means UCLA football is back in your life. Head out to the Rose Bowl to enjoy America's best tailgating and to make more unforgettable memories with the Bruins. Nico Iamaleava and the Bruins are ready to make an impact this year, and we need you cheering them at the Rose Bowl. Visit UCLABruins.com or call 310-UCLA-WIN to lock in your tickets today. 310-UCLA-WIN.
Family Matters amplifies the loudest and the proudest political voices in the Black community today.
What's up, guys? I'm CJ Pearson. There's so many incredible perspectives here in the Black community that you're going to hear from each and every week.
Because faith matters, country matters, and family matters.
This is exactly what the mainstream media was missing by not actually going to Black churches, going to Black barbershops, talking to the people at the forefront of this change in the community. Let me start here.
Family Matters with CJ Pearson.
Each and every week. We'll see you here. Talk to you soon.
Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
that no American may own a square inch of land in China. So the question is, why are we allowing somebody to buy very valuable lots if indeed they're Chinese? There needs to be reciprocity. We've failed to have rules that enforce reciprocity, and we need to do that.
China expert Gordon Chang, thank you very much for that comprehensive update on all the important stories. Gordon Chang, senior fellow at the Gatestone Institute, author of numerous books, including Plan Red, China's project to destroy America. That's his latest. And on X at Gordon G. Chang. Gordon Chang, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
Well, thank you, Frank. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. And out to the freeways now on 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues, 790 KABC. Good afternoon. Rough day for crypto investors today. Take that and rewind it back. Bitcoin has just wiped out all of its 2025 gains. Yep, you heard me. And you probably already know that watching the crypto action. Bitcoin cracking below 92,000 today after a rough week or so. On the downside, joining us live now is ELEANOR TERRETTT, business journalist and co-host of the Crypto in America podcast, who speaks crypto very, very well, fluent crypto, as a matter of fact. ELEANOR, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
Thank you, Frank. What a carnage it's been for Bitcoin this month, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, take it from the top and tell us what just happened here.
Yeah, so Bitcoin tumbling from its October record high, can you believe, just a few weeks ago, 126,000 to, just as you mentioned, below 92,000, wiping out all of its gains for the year and nearly a third of its value. The broader crypto market has now lost over $1 trillion, leaving many investors, frankly, pretty rattled and concerned that the carnage may not be over just yet. Polymarket, the widely followed crypto prediction platform, is signaling that a 77% probability that Bitcoin could slip below 90,000 by the end of November. So we may not be done just yet. But experts are citing that the reason for all this could be profit-taking by long-term holders, institutional outflows, and leveraged positions being liquidated. Also, some ongoing macro uncertainty here. There's also this technical signal that I thought was I'm mentioning it just because it's a pretty interesting name. Traders use this term called a death cross, Frank, what the technical term actually means is when a short-term moving average drops below a long-term moving average. They call this a death cross, and they use this term when they see it's a warning signal that prices may continue to spiral downward. So for all intents and purposes here, we're basically just trying to illustrate that traders are worried that this long-term selling that we've been seeing over the last couple of days to weeks may not be over. But not everyone is seeing panic here. Analysts from Bernstein, 10X Research, and B2 Ventures say that the market just might be consolidating. That happens, during these 4-year cycles, with key support levels being between 89,000 and 94,000. Institutional buying includes MicroStrategy's recent 835 million Bitcoin purchase. You see Michael Saylor, he's always on Twitter, he's always saying, hey, new Bitcoin purchases. He did the same today. And we also have rising ETF adoption providing long-term tailwinds. Let's look at Ethereum. It is feeling it even more. If you look at the long-term trends of Ethereum, it did hit a record high of just below 5,000 in August this year, Frank. Remember, we did talk about whether Ethereum would hit the 5,000 level. It came within a whisker of that. But since then, it's been all downhill. Ethereum is now struggling to stay above the 3,000 level, down about 40% in recent months, and at its lowest level since May. Year to date, Ethereum is down about 5%. So we'll see how it goes. It's looking pretty bad out there today.
Yeah, Eleanor Terrett live with us here, business news journalist and co-host of the Crypto in America podcast. And there's something else that caught my attention. Something about a 4-year cycle for Bitcoin. Is that another possible explanation here? What's been described as in one report today on Yahoo Finance is that Bitcoin price under pressure slips below 92,000 as a self-fulfilling prophecy, puts a 4-year cycle in focus. Is that a thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So some analysts are pointing to the Bitcoin historical 4-year cycle, right, which many often see as an explanation for when we see corrections or consolidations following these halving events. And this pattern, combined with recent profit taking, as I mentioned, and the institutional outflows and the liquidations, might help explain the current volatility. But the 4-year cycle is something that traders and analysts often point to as a reason for some of this selling. But I think we have to see maybe some more evidence of this selling before we actually point to that as some possible the reasoning here. But we could check back on that maybe in a week or two, Frank.
All right. We won't wait 4 years to get the answer in that one. In the meantime, we see we're going to follow the price as we go along here. 91,770 here at the moment for Bitcoin. Ethereum ETH at 3,024 is what I'm looking at here. What about Ethereum? It did crack below 3,000 today, I believe, right?
It did. It cracked below 3,000. Yep. A lot of bearish sentiment here, and as I said, down about 40% in recent months, down about 5% year to date. I did mention the rising ETF adoptions, though, which is providing a pretty bullish headwind for at least for the altcoins. And what do I mean by altcoins? The alternative coins to Bitcoin. If you think when you say altcoins, it means an alt to Bitcoin. But those are hitting the market at a pretty rapid pace, despite the government shutdown, which is pretty interesting. So a lot of these altcoin ETFs came to market just this past Thursday. The very first XRP spot ETF launched on Wall Street. Demand was so strong on day one of trading that became the biggest ETF launch of the year, outpacing 900 other ETF launches. And I would say the rising ETF adoption signals that there is institutional interest in these altcoin ETFs, and crypto is growing, even as the prices remain pretty volatile. So we also saw Hedera ETF, a Solana ETF, and a Litecoin ETF during the government shutdown. And Frank, remember, it wasn't all that long ago that the first Bitcoin spot ETF arrived here on Wall Street. BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF, IBIT, is now its most profitable, and it manages nearly $100 billion in assets for its IBIT Bitcoin. So you can just see how profitable and how and how much investor appetite are actually going into these traditional investment vehicles where crypto is the underlying asset here.
All right, and Solana, you mentioned down to around 130 or so. That one also, is that a low of the year?
Solana, I'm not sure if it's a low of the year. It's definitely down there, though. We've seen highs of around, I believe, upwards of 160 this year. So definitely some profit taking there, some inflows and outflows in those ETFs. But a highlight of the year for Solana was that ETF launch a couple weeks ago when the team at Bitwise went to the New York Stock Exchange to ring the closing bell to celebrate the launch of that ETF. The Solana community, Frank, much like the XRP community and the Bitcoin community, is very strong.
XRP, I'm looking at about 215 here at the moment. On the regulatory front, what do we need to know? I know you follow this very closely as well with the Senate committee, right, set to hold a hearing for the CFTC chair nominee. What do we need to know about that?
That's right. Senate Act will hold a nomination hearing for Michael Selig, President Trump's latest pick to lead the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. And I say the latest pick because you might remember that his original choice for the role, Brian Quintenz, had his nomination withdrawn earlier this year. Mike Selig currently serves as the chief counsel on the SEC Crypto Task Force, and he's also senior counsel to Chair Paul Atkins. But he began his career at the CFTC, clerking for the former chairman Chris Giancarlo many years ago. And why are we talking about the CFTC and Selig in relation to crypto? Because under the new crypto bill the Senate is pushing through, and we'll talk about this next time I'm on the show, the CFTC is set to get more oversight over crypto regulation, and the industry is really eager to see someone who really understands the space at the helm of that agency. And so after the hearing this week, the committee will need to vote him out of the committee with a vote, and then his nomination will head to the Senate floor for a full vote. So from everything my sources are telling me, he's pretty liked on both sides of the aisle here, Frank. He's not too contentious. He's not too controversial. So getting his nomination through the committee won't be too controversial, I'm told.
All right, Eleanor, thank you very much for that thorough update. I guess at the next crypto conference, they'll have to put the champagne on ice for the time being, and we look forward to your updates here. Eleanor Terrett, business journalist and co-host of the Crypto in America podcast, following the cryptos very closely. Eleanor, always great to speak with you. Thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Thank you, Frank. Talk soon.
Thank you very much. And once again, Bitcoin right now at around 91,700 or so. The Dow pulling back 557 at the close today. The S&P 500 down 62. The NASDAQ taking a hit, down 193 points. The volatility index spiking 13%. Stay tuned now for the 790 KBC News Blitz. I'll be back with more at 4 tomorrow afternoon right here on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC.
Bruin fans, fall is finally here. That means UCLA football is back in your life. Head out to the Rose Bowl to enjoy America's best tailgating and to make more unforgettable memories with the Bruins. Nico Iamaleava and the Bruins are ready to make an impact this year, and we need you cheering them at the Rose Bowl. Visit UCLABruins.com or call 310-UCLA-WIN to lock in your tickets today. 310-UCLA-WIN.